So I'm super happy to say hello and represent my guests, Henry Shevlin from University of Cambridge, Tena is not here, Andrea Pirša Ilić from A1, Croatia, Matija Ilijaš from Microblink, and Davor Bruketa from Bruketa&Žinić&Grey. Okay, let's start. Henry, do you think people will start marrying AI anytime soon?
Yeah, I think very, very soon. I think it's going to be a very much a fringe phenomenon to start with. But I see it as the kind of thing that's going to become increasingly normalized. I would say 10 years from now, many of us might find that our sort of teenage kids say, oh, I don't need a real boyfriend, I don't need a real girlfriend. Tessa is all I need, where they're referring to their replica or some successor like that. And marriage is, I guess, a little bit trickier insofar as that will require some kind of legal recognition of the status of artificial systems. And I imagine the law will lag behind that. But I think there will be certainly the idea of that people will be partnering up long term with their AI companions. I mean, we can already see in a way that that's already happening in some fringe cases in replica. But I think that's going to become a lot more mainstream.
Okay. Why do you think conversations like this spark so much interest?
I think it's a unique point in human history. I don't think we've ever been in this position before where we as a species, we use tools all the time, and we've been using tools as long as we've been humans, and even before that. But we've gone now from creating tools to interacting with agents. And I think the closest historical comparison here would be something like the domestication of the dog, right? That's a system, a dog, if I can call it a system, is an animal, and it's something that we interact with not just as a tool, but as a companion and fellow agent. But obviously, these agents couldn't talk back to us, and we didn't create them from scratch, whereas that's what we're doing now.
What would you say consciousness is, if you had to define it?
So I'm going to fall back on the standard sort of philosopher's answer here, which is a system is conscious, a system meaning here, I'm speaking neutrally between biological and artificial systems. A system is conscious if there is something it's like to be that system. If there's something it's like from the inside. If when its visual system picks up on things in the environment, if there's something it's like for it to see through that system's eyes.
Fair enough. Davor, do you think AI is becoming or will become conscious? And what would a world like that look like? You're a creative person, so I'm really interested in your opinion.
really doubt, because I think AI, what it does now in scratches and it's going to do in the future is, I mean, it helps us in many ways, but the real consciousness comes from part of our brain which is not completely conscious. It's our right brain, which is much more complicated, which we don't understand, which makes all the important decisions for humans, and AI doesn't do that. But AI can do really a lot of things. It can look like a human, and especially in advertising, we are already trying to use that, designing brand characters that look like human, talk like human. You will have very personal relationship in the future with your brain, with your brand, but it's not going to be, and it's never going to be a real person, because we interact with real people on so many levels that are not linear consciousness. It's much more complicated than that, and this chemistry that is happening that we don't understand completely, it's really hard to replicate in AI. Yes, I mean, I can talk to my Siri, I can get angry on my Siri, but it's some people who have all kind of psychological problems. They will probably get more related with AI personalities, but I think we will learn that, as we learn that social networks are not real socializing, we will also learn these are not other humans that we like to interact with.
Is there a danger in all of this, maybe for certain segments of the population? Do you think somebody might be...
You have people like with social networks, you have people who are compensating stuff with technology. I mean, it was always something that was compensating for people who have different psychological abilities, and now it's social networks. Tomorrow is AI characters, but we will find out that we really need real humans to interact with. But it can, as machinery help us in many ways, these machines will also help us in many new ways that we didn't see before. And for advertising, it's really, really fun to have artificial intelligence to play with, and we are going to use it in forthcoming years a lot. And we are already using it in some cases.
Can you explain a scenario where you're using it?
We are developing now a brand character for Frankfurt School of Management together with Mindsmiths. It will be our first attempt to build a brand character that you will be able to interact with. I mean, Siri is kind of a brand character for Apple that we can more.
She's a bit boring, isn't she?
She's really disappointment, if I may say.
She's a drag.
And I sometimes I wonder what they're doing in Apple, because since Steve Jobs has died, I have a feeling that, I mean, all the technology, I mean, it gets better and better, but there are no big steps as it was before.
There's no
Siri,
soul.
Siri still, I'm trying to talk to my Siri about, a little bit more complicated questions, like Nola Brzina from Mindsmiths. It's much closer to human being than Siri is, than Siri will be. So I wonder how, if Mindsmiths can build something that you can, more or less talk with,
relate
Siri
with,
does not getting any better.
So how are you and Mindsmiths raising this brand character?
Well, this is the process that we are entering now, and first we have to understand the brand and define what the brand stands for, and then we will have to learn what the people who are using that brand and what are their expectations, and then we'll try to build a perfect companion for these people. We will have a team of designers, psychologists, writers who will work on that. So it's quite a challenge for us.
I can imagine, yeah. Yeah, Henry, please.
I just wanted to add, maybe Apple should take everything that Steve Jobs ever wrote and use it as a GPT-3 prompt.
There we go.
And then they can go and get his genius back. In fact, just 2 days ago, someone released a GPT-3 generated episode of the Joe Rogan Experience with Steve Jobs as a guest. And they used voice synthesis and recordings of Steve Jobs and Joe Rogan. And you can listen to it, and it really sounds, it seems a little bit less coherent than the show normally is, but it's plausible enough.
Exactly, and I was really hoping that Siri would get to the level. I mean, it would be more fun to talk to Steve Jobs than to Siri, to be honest. And there is technology present that to recreate Steve Jobs. There are so many recordings of him. There are so many things that he wrote and said that it would be really possible, but I have a feeling that they're just monetizing Steve's ideas from the past, and they're focused on that.
But why are we a bit behind in this? I have the same feeling, by the way. Is it because they're just nerds doing it? There's not enough creative people participating, not enough philosophers, not enough artists, not enough people who see the world differently? Or is there something else at play here? Andrea?
Well, I'm not sure. I would say it's a combination of all of this. So basically, a lot of these AI conversational applications are built by technical people, and in a lot of projects, there is not a lot of combination of designers, creative people, philosophers, and real users. And I would say that this is the main reason why we have solutions like this.
Matija, from your experience and general knowledge as an engineer, is the approach of shaping, let's say, a brand character something similar to what Davor was describing, or any kind of AI that has to communicate with people? Is there a standard kind of process at play that you use for standard software, like really deep user research and then design and then refining? Or is it just make it and put it out there and hope for the best?
Well, I don't have experience with technology like conversational technology that directly communicates with people. But we build software that's basically on your phone, and it can help you solve some task that you may want to save time on, such as onboarding via your ID for a bank, let's say. And the part where we see a very big need, and we have been kind of setting this up for the last years, is the UX of the actual, the UX that does interact with the human, and the models in the background are actually heavily connected, right? So you can't really go and say, okay, I'm going to just train this model and it's going to read all the data from the ID, and then I'll just have the engineers do it and get to the UX part, and then UX mobile engineers can just make it pretty or whatever. It's actually a very strong iterative and back and forth process where you, and we have been doing this, and I think this is why we've been so competitive, is because we are utilizing the interaction with the human to actually make the problem simpler, and that's how we can make the solution faster, more accurate, and better. So an example would be, you take your ID, you put it in front of the mobile, there's a glare from this light, and if you have just a simple take an image and have a huge model, it can be a GPT model if you want, but if the glare is covering a piece of information, then you have a very big problem of not being theoretically even in a possibility to read some of the information. So if you design a UX which has a machine learning model that in the real time detects the card, it gives the input to the user, this is where we're seeing your ID, you detect where the glare is, and you just say, please move it because you see that this is a problem, then that's how you can make a problem simpler, right? So a lot of this interaction is a very big opportunity to make these solutions better.
Okay. What do you think about the Google engineer? Henry was mentioning him a while ago in his talk. The guy that claimed that the language model has consciousness and then got fired. Is that fair, first of all? Was there anthropomorphing at play or something else?
Well, I'll be completely honest. I think there are some a bit crazy people in every domain, and when you go to a top machine learning conference, you can see brilliant people, and a lot of them have different ways of explaining what they're seeing from the technology to themselves. From my side, I'm a bit more maybe on the rational side, so I'll go and say, these guys are crazy, but they can go back to me and say, this guy doesn't really think about this deep enough, right? So it's my stance is that I wouldn't fire this guy from the company, so I would try to utilize that craziness a bit, right, in understanding the solution better.
Right.
But yeah, there is no, maybe to the topic, right, there is no, when you train these models and you look at all the tasks they perform very well at, you don't, if you're an ML engineer, you don't really think about the consciousness at all. It's more like a gradual acceptance of a very advanced technology, right? So I'll give you like a short example. The aha moment for a lot of people has been the GPT-3, let's say. Mm-hmm. But for me, the aha moment was in 2015 when we first saw a deep learning network actually detect a super hard to distinguish handwritten math equation compared to software that our amazing team has been building for 4 years before that. And it completely blew the system out of competition. And it was crazy. We basically ordered 2 cakes in the middle of the day, and we celebrated how big of a jump that was, technologically speaking, right? So this was a moment where we were like, well, but what is happening inside? But in these 7 years that passed, we did understand what's happening in the background. So this is just what's happening now is a very big demonstration of it on big data, but it's the same technology, so we're not as concerned with the consciousness question.
Okay. Henry, you want to say something?
I just wanted to chime in. I think so. I've spoken to quite a few people at Google who are involved in development of large language models and LaMDA. And I don't think Blake Lemoine was alone, even if his views were more extreme. I think a lot of people involved in development thought, this is really weird. There's something strange going on here. And there have been lively, positive conversations at Google about this. I think where Blake went wrong was in taking what was an internal company matter and discussing it in the broader public, and also going to a lawyer. It's never a good move in that kind of situation. I guess I would also add that I think, going back to your point, Davor, that it's true that we don't understand consciousness in the human case, but I think that's precisely why we should remain open-minded about the kinds of systems that it could be instantiated in. Now, look, I'm definitely not saying LaMDA is conscious. But I mean, I work in this field, and I've spoken to a lot of people and asked them, what do you think about the Blake Lemoine incident? Do you think LaMDA could be conscious? And the vast majority of them say no, but they all gave a different reason why not. And I think that reflects the controversies and disputes in consciousness science. And given that uncertainty, I think we should remain at least a little bit open-minded about the possibility that systems that have architectures quite unlike ours might still be at least slightly conscious.
And Japanese sex dolls can be extremely sexy. And some people really have a lot of fun with them.
Whose name we shall not mention. Andrea, do you think some of your colleagues will be replaced by AI anytime soon? You don't have to name names.
No, so basically, I think that we should focus on applications based on these AI solutions. So there is a huge area where we can build solutions based on these models, where we can really use AI in different ways. And I don't think that any kind of AI will replace any type of developer or ML engineer or something like that. We only can use the opportunities that these huge models are bringing and find the right way to make applications of these.
Okay, if it were so, and you could be replaced, let's let our imagination fly for a bit, and you never had to work again, what would you do if AI is doing all your work?
I would find some other area of technology and do research in this area. So I'm a technology person. I'm really realistic about the technology, and I think that probably I would be retired or dead in that time, so I'm not worried.
Okay, optimistic. I'm kidding. Yeah, please.
Question. So I think we've been talking about this internally in the company as well, and I think the notion that we will be replacing people, it's true probably like 20%. There's a degree where it's true, and then there's the other part where it's unnecessarily maybe taken as a threat to a lot of different people of different skill sets. The term I've heard being used, which I think is good, is artificial augmented intelligence, where the point is that we take in all of these tools as something that can help us do our jobs better, right? So you asked about developers, right? Like the Copilot from OpenAI. Actually, it's amazing. It's progressing amazingly well. And programming, because it's so structured, is probably one of the biggest contenders of being, automating an extreme amount of, manual work that is being done. And, for an engineer, you can have a moment of maybe being a bit scared about that. But also, if you imagine someone having that kind of co-pilot, as they call it, imagine how much, value or problem solving you can
how
basically...
How much deeper you could go,
deeper you could go with your thinking, how much value we can create with these co-pilots, right? So it's more about, embracing the help and not being it's not butting heads, it's actually, we, together with AI, we can really do, 100 times more probably in the near future.
I agree. Henry?
I guess I would sort of agree insofar as, I think automation is inevitable for a vast majority of human pursuits. Maybe there are exceptions where the human component is essential. But I think the question is sort of not if jobs are going to be automated, but who's next? Jobs have already, of course, been automated. And yeah, how soon it's going to happen. So I think one thing that took a lot of people by surprise, something that would have seemed quite unlikely, I think, 5 years ago, is that graphic design would largely be automated away, and it's something that we're in the early stages of right now. Obviously, you're still going to have graphic designers for sort of very, in the same way that we still have people who make handmade pottery, right? There's a certain kind of status or specialness associated with having something made by a human.
Artisan graphic design. That would be it probably then.
Yeah,
you pay a lot more for it than for a GIF.
Yeah, so I think, right, so in sort of genuine sort of fine art world, you're always going to have humans. But something produced by Stable Diffusion, I believe it was, won an art competition in the US a couple of weeks ago. And I've been just using Stable Diffusion at home. I run a Dungeons & Dragons campaign at home for me and various other friends and researchers. And I've previously in the past commissioned artwork from real artists. And it's kind of hit or miss. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not so good. But now, just running Stable Diffusion at home on my computer, I can generate 200 images and pick the best one. And so I don't think I'll ever be going to a human designer again for that purpose.
But I think no designers or copywriters. In 2019, Alibaba presented in Cannes an engine that was producing copy and graphic design for Google Ads and testing what works, what doesn't, and then change it in million iterations. No copywriter or graphic designer was sad that machine is going to do that. So it just opens more time for us to do really interesting stuff. And machines were always just taking over boring things that we anyway don't want to do and don't like to do. And the example is Google Ads. So I think that at least for my industry, and I'm a graphic designer, we are super happy and we cannot wait that all this boring shit that we do every day is going to be replaced by some engine that will do that for us.
What about the creative side of AI, so to speak, and their work? What do you feel of that? And is there something that you will use in the future in your campaigns?
Well, it's, today I can, there is software that I say, look, make the picture of this and that, and, I have a drawing finished in a certain way. But it has limitations, and it always will have. And what humans are here is always to find the new ways, and we'll always do that. When we look at our ancestors 200 years ago, which is really a near future, now for that there is no. There is no jobs like that, what these people were doing 200 years ago. And we found something else to do. And there will always be something else, something more interesting and something more fulfilling for us. And most of the people 200 years ago were doing very basic manual jobs. And now most of the people are doing something much more interesting. But still we do a lot of boring shit that has to be replaced by machines.
A lot of spreadsheet stuff, yeah, definitely. Andrea, do you think discussions like this are good or bad for making tech and AI more approachable to the general population?
I think they are necessary. So basically, with a lot of news that are happening around AI that are being placing in different areas, social areas and so on, are confusing people. And people are starting to be scared of some applications based on the AI. And I think that is really necessary to put some good grounds on AI. What does AI mean? What are some really areas that are having big potential for AI? What are some dangers of AI? And which things should be regulated? And this is something that really can help general population to understand AI, applications of AI, and to not be scared of using it.
Totally agree. Henry, do discussions like this bring us closer to understanding what it means to be human?
Yeah, I think, well, it's tricky because I think as I said in my talk, that a lot of the things that we thought made us uniquely human, like our linguistic capabilities, are being slowly eroded by AI. Sort of the domain of tasks that are uniquely human is shrinking all the time. So I don't know if whether it's helping us understand what it means to be human or showing us that there's maybe nothing fundamentally special about us, that there's nothing that we can do that an AI system couldn't also do eventually in the next decade or two. And maybe instead of thinking about what makes humans special, we should be thinking about what makes generally intelligent, sentient beings special. So in a way, I spent a lot of my time, my career, working on animal minds and on animal consciousness. Mm-hmm. And so I think decentering humans in the narrative and thinking about different types of general intelligence, from octopuses to honeybees, and locating ourselves not at sort of the top of this hierarchy, but maybe just this point in a web of different kinds of cognitive agents, different kinds of intelligent systems. I think that's probably a useful thing, decentering humanness as something unique and special.
If you were the chief morale officer for AI, what would you teach it?
That's a great question. So there's a really interesting conversation in philosophy, in design and cognitive science about the idea of artificial moral agents, the idea that we could one day delegate moral decision-making to machines. And a very crude distinction is sometimes drawn between top-down and bottom-up systems of training moral agents. So the top-down, you take the works of Immanuel Kant or your favorite moral philosopher and just plug them into the system and you get a perfect philosophical agent like that. Whereas the bottom-up system says that we should approach morality in the same way we teach children morality, right? Through example, through praise, through admonition. So I think if I was, and I have a lot more sympathy for the second approach, so I think if I was trying to bring about moral AI, moral agents, artificial moral agents that would align with human morality, I think a bottom-up approach where we bring them into our world slowly and carefully and show them the way that we think we should live and the things we all agree about, the things that most of us agree about, the things that we disagree about. I think that's going to result in a much more human-aligned sort of artificial system than just taking some chosen moral theory and plugging it in.
Yeah, alignment is a big question, and it's actually a question for a completely separate panel, for sure. But I agree, we should approach it more like a parent, thinking about the best outcomes for the AI and for everybody involved makes total sense. Davor, what do you think about your work is special and can never be outsourced or replaced by an AI?
Well, that's a really tough question because most of my work today can be replaced and will be replaced in more or less near future. What I think I'm doing is I'm connecting people like Nokia, but in more emotional way. And the way we do it today is super slow, super boring, and super inefficient. And I strongly feel it, but I don't have the answer how. And I'm every day trying to find the new ways of putting people in relationships. And when I'm saying people behind the brand, people who are we talking with, we're trying to connect. Brands are also groups of people, and we're trying to put them in some kind of relationship. And I think the way we are doing it now will die very soon. And we are searching for new ways of connecting the humans.
Are we ready for this as a species?
I'm 100% sure we are, because it's a process that is everlasting. We're trying to do that always, from ever, and I think the change is accelerating at fantastic pace. But still not fast enough, by my opinion, because still most of things I'm doing is fucking stupid ad. And
I love it when people
I'm waiting for this to change for the last 20-something years, and still, 2022, most of the revenue we are making is from making ads. And we are doing all kinds of experiments. and things are changing, but not. When you look at the scale of 10,000 years, it's fantastic pace. But when you look at scale of my small life, then it's super slow.
Slow, yeah, I agree. For me as well.
But yes, we are ready, and I think that the narrative that everything is going to change lasts so long that everybody expects the change. Everybody feels, where is the fucking change? Why still we are making 30 seconds TV ads?
Are your clients, when you mention, like, we're going to do this AI personality that's going to help your brand, are they ever raising their eyebrows like, ooh, that's the one that really recognizes people as animals sometimes? I'm not really up for that.
The complication comes from the whole organization of businesses. And, everybody would like to change something. Everybody is open for novelty. But sometimes you have to change the whole system. And then it gets complicated and heavy. And
there's a lot of tough questions in discussions.
There's so many questions that, and people, it gets too complicated to change the whole way of, because you have to change the whole organization and then the whole market. And then, it's so complicated to change. You cannot take one little thing and change it. Or you can, but then, it works like an error. But that I never thought that I never met anybody who says, oh, no, I don't want to change anything. All my clients said, let's do something that nobody did before.
So people are curious and open.
People are super curious.
Testing.
People there is, because, people are expecting change. And I think the society in general is ready for bigger steps in changing everything. But, it's not easy to applicate the new systems of anything.
True.
And I'm still doing 30 seconds
manual
TV,
stuff.
Linear TV ads as the main product.
Damn. Matija, would you ever outsource some part of personal life to AI? Okay, we talked about the programming and hopefully big chunks of it will be outsourced. But what about personal life, like going to your mother-in-law, something like that?
I think that would be too simple heuristic. It wouldn't solve the problem. I'm actually I wanted to make a point maybe on what Henry said. I think that we already, without even the stable diffusion generated perfect images, we already have reached a point where I think quantity has completely overpowered quality. And I'm personally moving away from technology as much as I can in my free time, and I'm trying to remove my phone from the room where I'm at sometimes. And so I'm not convinced that there's like this unlimitless space for additional great value of some of these applications, right? I think when it comes to art, people will get back to, trying to find that thing that really resonates. And I do think that a lot of this generated stuff is going to be what it is. It's an average of all the things that have been ingested in the system, right? You can see people move away from having a GoPro camera on their travels to having only the smartphone to having only a Kodak photo, and then also having this instant photos, right? So I think we've already reached this kind of peak of ingesting all of these great, new ways of content, and I'm not sure how it's going to play out, but I think it's going to be, we're going to get back a bit to minimalism in a way. That's my personal take, maybe.
I like the approach, and personally, and a lot of my friends who are in technology have been plugging out a lot lately. So I think that's also one trend that's happening and will happen more and more. People are a little bit overstimulated by everything. So you're still gonna keep going to your mother-in-law. Okay, good to hear.
I would maybe just add.
Yeah.
That, I think it's also we need to start thinking about what are actually the problems we need to solve. Like a lot of the talks today were really inspiring that way. So, you know, it's crazy that so much money is being invested in some of the, you know, mainstream media, maybe content, when there's like a fraction of that being invested, let's say, in healthcare or maybe in some other stuff, right? So I think with time we will understand what we don't actually want and what we do want, and it's going to be maybe a bit more steered towards, you know, applications that are not as in your face, but they're actually just unlocking you to go about your way and ingesting maybe some very small and quality pieces of content, right?
To make it more controlled. Henry, what does the British government do and say about all things AI and the impact on the society?
Well, I would defer to Chris from an earlier panel on sort of fine details of policy. But one thing I can say that, so I did my PhD in the US, and I kind of assumed that since, you know, there are a lot more academic jobs in the US, it's a much bigger country, I kind of assumed I'd be staying in the US, but I got lured back to Cambridge by the Leverhulme Centre for the Future of Intelligence, which was just getting going. And I think one way in which the UK is creating a fantastic academic ecosystem that I think connects to sort of a broader tech ecosystem is through these really good research centres. So my own centre, of course, but also the University of Oxford has just started its Institute for Ethics in AI, has the Alan Turing Institute, the Ada Lovelace Institute, the Oxford Internet Institute, all absolute world centers of excellence. So, and frankly, you know, I say this as someone who's still got very close links with US academia. I don't think there's anywhere really comparable anywhere else certainly in the US, and I don't think in Europe. So I think one thing that we have done very well in the UK is create a space that's not just focused on tech, but also pulls in people like philosophers, social scientists, literary studies experts, to create a broader conversation and public-facing dialogue around AI.
Yeah, that's really amazing, because here tech is still kind of for techies, and it's a little bit difficult to get people involved, but Crow AI is busy with that for sure. Okay, any last thoughts, opinions on conscious AI and possible threats and opportunities, Davor?
I hope they're not going to be lost. There will be more thoughts about it. Well, I'm looking forward to the future. What scares me is 3 years ago I read a book about development of technology that says that whenever we have a fast pace in developing technology, there is a major war always happen in the history, that we use all this technology first in killing each other. And I thought, oh, this is not going to happen this time. And now I am a little bit worried.
Okay, Matija.
I would say there's no stopping of technological progress. So the conversations about how should we maybe, you know, stop some of the scary stuff we're seeing is not maybe the way to do it. I would suggest for everyone, I would encourage everyone that AI is really not that complicated, and that whatever your background is, there are multiple levels of abstraction where you can just start and get to know the technology on a level that's, you know, enough for you to contribute and to help steer the technology in the right way. Right? So I would encourage a lot of people who are not engineers to join the AI, you know, way of doing things. And I'm very optimistic about the future. Yeah.
That's good to know. Great. Andrea?
Well, I would totally agree with Matija. I think that really education is something that can help a lot of people to understand what AI is, what AI will bring. And I think that it's the key moment for companies and for our colleges, our educational centers of excellence to start working together with governance, and to start really understanding what is AI, what AI can bring in the future.
Great. Henry?
Just a quick final thought. Well, first I'll say I completely agree with Matija that I think there are multiple levels of engagement, and I think that's something that the tech world could be, maybe tech world and other stakeholders could be better at broadcasting. That, you know, you don't need to know linear algebra for your existing knowledge base to have interesting connections to AI, that drawing on people with different kinds of expertise is really valuable for advancing the conversation. So everyone should be feel open to that it's an open conversation. And on the topic of AI consciousness, I'll just say one final thing, which is, so my PhD advisor was Peter Godfrey Smith, a philosopher of biology. He's written a book about octopuses and octopus minds. And he and I get into a lot of disputes about AI consciousness, friendly disputes. You know, he's convinced that consciousness is this very biological thing that'll never be replicated in silicon. And what I always say to him, and this is the thought I'd leave people on, is that maybe he's right, that consciousness is somehow deeply bound up with metabolism or cells or the fine details of our biology. But I can almost guarantee that 50 years from now, he will have lost that debate as far as the public are concerned. So even if AI never becomes conscious, we will treat it as if it is conscious, just thanks to the ability of these systems to elicit strong anthropomorphizing responses. So views that are resistant to this idea, even if they're right, are likely to be swamped by technological progress.
Yeah, so far several times while talking, we came to the conclusion we underestimated it heavily. Let's maybe stop doing that and keep our eyes open and see what's ahead of us. Thank you, everybody. This was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.